Well, welcome everybody to Holy Saturday, or as some call it, Black Saturday.
That's right.
Yeah. This is the day that we remember when Jesus laid in the tomb.
That's right.
It's the day of Sabbath rest. So most of the rest of the Jewish world in this time wasn't doing much. They were resting.
Yeah.
And Jesus was resting.
That's right.
He was in the tomb. So this is a day that in me, like in my growing up as a Christian, I was never invited to think about. I was never told to be like, I never heard a lesson on the day Jesus laid in the tomb.
Yeah.
You just kind of hop over this day. You
Right,
go
because
death
nothing happens.
to resurrection. And like even like my own church, like we have Good Friday service and we have Easter Sunday.
That's right.
We don't celebrate Saturday, you know?
Yeah.
And so what's going on here? Why should we care about Holy Saturday?
Yeah.
Why should we focus on it?
Well, the lack of teaching on it makes a little bit of sense because we're not really told much happens on this day.
Right.
Within Scripture, what happens is the religious leaders get anxious because they heard that Jesus prophesied he would rise on the third day.
Right.
So they're convinced the disciples might try to steal the body.
Yeah.
So they go back to Pilate, the governor of Jerusalem at that time, and convince him to put some guards up to prevent any shenanigans and making all their problems worse.
Okay.
That's the only information we have.
So only Rome is doing something.
Only Rome is doing something.
Yeah,
like
everybody else is Sabbathing.
And so really then like, okay, we don't have a lot of textual stuff to go on, but like as a day in the Christian calendar, as a moment and an event in Jesus' life, what should we be thinking about?
Yeah.
On a day where Jesus does nothing.
Right.
And I think the fact that Jesus has done nothing, or is doing nothing, or did do nothing on this day,
because he was dead.
because he was, is actually part of what we're supposed to meditate
Yeah,
on.
it's the message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we jump into that, let's frame some categories.
Okay.
Because we have a day, Saturday, the Sabbath day.
Yeah. All faithful Jews were not working.
Right. Let's talk about the Sabbath for a second and what its origins and significance were and are.
They have their origins in, the Ten Commandments.
And first in the creation story.
The creation story before that. That's right. Yeah.
So God worked for 6 days.
That's right.
And on the seventh day, he rested.
That's right.
And he looked at everything he made and said, "It is good." And so he patterned his people after that for 6 days they could work, and on the seventh day they would rest. And in so doing, they would recognize that God is the sovereign provider of everything in their life, not their own toil.
Yeah. And throughout the biblical story, sevens and groups of sevens, or a 6 plus 1, is often a way to talk about a new thing beginning, or the start of something, or the end of one thing. Like even when King Solomon was coronated and his father said that his son would rule in his place, he gives him 7 commands. Because he's beginning something new.
Yes.
He's starting a new phase of the dynasty.
The time of David's work was over, and now it's time for Solomon.
So the 6 and 7 pattern is
cool.
throughout Scripture as the ending of one thing and the dawning of a new.
Yeah.
It's similarly in the Mount Sinai, it's in reference to the Passover, because they used to work 7 days when they were in slavery.
When they were slaves, they worked every day of the week. That's right.
But now that they are in God's new kingdom, they will rest because, as you said before, God is doing the work.
That's right. On the seventh day, we rest because God's working.
That's right.
Okay. But now on the seventh day, on Holy Saturday, Jesus, as God in the flesh, is resting.
Yeah, and I think it's because he's done everything he's supposed to do.
He said it is finished.
Yeah, all the miracles are done.
Yep.
There's no more sins to atone for, no more religious elite to question and humiliate.
No more fig trees to curse.
No more fig trees to curse, no more powers to fight. He has done everything that he needs to do to bring the dawning of a new creation.
Right.
And so like a good faithful Jew,
he rests.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too from the people's perspective, they're resting too.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like, Jesus died and then they had to do something to bring him back to life.
That's right.
They didn't earn what's going to come on Easter Sunday. They didn't earn resurrection. Right. They were resting too, and probably resting in mourning, for some, and relief for others.
Yeah. The invitation, I think what you're getting at here is, in a day where Jesus says it is finished and all the work has been done in the past, and even God himself decides it's a day of rest.
Yeah.
It's an invitation for us to realize that everything we need to be entered into God's kingdom and gain access to God has already been provided and is being provided to such an extent by God that not even God himself feels the need to work. So you do not need to work to be part of God's kingdom,
right?
To become part of his family, to have access to God, to be forgiven by him.
Yeah.
It's all been done for you.
Yeah.
Rest.
You can have a Holy Saturday because Jesus had a Good Friday.
Yes.
Like you can rest because Jesus worked.
Yeah.
And Jesus invites you into his rest by waiting today, by resting today. Yeah. I think about the author of Hebrews. He talks about how there's this Sabbath rest that still remains for the people of God, that is being extended to God's people. But for him, he's not saying, hey, take the seventh day off. You know, I don't think he's denying that one should do that, but he's using that metaphorically, and he's extending to them the idea of faith in Jesus is Sabbath rest.
Yeah.
And that Sabbath rest remains if you put your faith in Jesus.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. He's like, and you can rest from your work.
Right.
Because, I mean, we toil like crazy to validate ourselves, right? To our own psyche, to our neighbors, to our culture, to our work environments, to our families. For a lot of us, we think we're trying to validate ourselves to God.
Yeah.
Like, have I impressed you yet, God? Like, do you think I've done enough yet, God? Like, you know, I know here at Spoken Gospel, we get questions all the time. How do I know I'm saved?
Yeah.
Right? How do I really know that I know that I know that I'm saved? And a lot of times it's, have I done enough? Have I believed hard enough? And what we all need, the message we all need is there's rest. Like we need a message of rest.
Jesus
that the work
has
is
done
done.
it all.
Yeah.
It is finished.
It is finished.
You can rest.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the ritual of baptism is a symbol of this day.
That's right.
We all die in the water. We all rest in the water.
We're
buried in the water, and then risen to new life. And that is a passive action.
Right, so you are being baptized.
You are being baptized. You are being buried. You are doing nothing, resting like Jesus, because soon, the next day, you'll be resurrected in his power by his grace.
Yeah.
So the invitation on Black Saturday is to rest like God did, because he has done everything needed to bring you to him and to bring him to his kingdom. Yeah.
So for people today, kind of in between Good Friday and Easter Sunday, I'm sure a lot of people are preparing for family and, you know, they've got busy calendars and everything. But if they're watching this, if they're listening to this, what are ways we're talking about, like, oh, it is finished, rest, take a Sabbath, you know, when we're talking about this, what are we inviting them into? What is Jesus inviting them into? What does it mean to rest in the work that is finished? Does it mean like, oh yeah, just don't worry about it, just live however you want, don't go to church tomorrow, treat people however you want? Like what is the rest that he's actually inviting them into that we're talking about here? Maybe it's simply, maybe a better word than rest is just confidence. There's like all this anxiety. What is our relationship to other people? What is our relationship to God? What is our relationship to ourselves? What must I do to feel right with myself, the world, and God? And we're anxiously trying to make it all happen. But because Jesus felt it appropriate to rest after he was finished, we can be confident that we need do nothing else to have all of our to be made right. Right? So there's I think a confidence that's expected in this day of death. That the work needed to do that inner healing between us and others, between us and ourselves, between us and God, is done by Jesus. And by meditating on his work on our behalf, the things that he accomplished for us, we will increasingly sense that sense of wholeness and peace and stillness and rest. I think you've nailed it. I think that's exactly what we're inviting people into, is confidence. Think about the gift of the Sabbath, the law of the Sabbath for the Jewish people. They were told to do no work. You know, so like when they were out in the wilderness, they were to gather food, you know, except on the Sabbath. They were to gather enough for 2 days, but then they weren't to gather anything the next day. And they were to trust that God would provide.
Yeah.
They didn't need to stockpile.
They didn't.
So it took a confidence in God's provision to allow for rest in the moment.
That's right.
I mean, I think the same way when I lay down to bed, when any of us go to bed at night, when any of us lay down to rest, we need some sense of confidence. You know, it's like why I have a hard time sleeping on like planes.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not confident that like the cart's not going to hit me down the aisle, or that I'm not going to drool on the person next to me, or like we need a sense of safety and confidence. You know, it's why like I have a ritual. Like I go around and lock my doors in my house before going to bed. You know, some people set alarms.
Right.
You know,
you don't fall asleep in places that you don't feel safe. Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
And so rest requires confidence.
Yes.
And I think Jesus, let's talk about it from his point of view for a second. Like Jesus was confident in the power of the Father that he could lay down his life because he knew that God would bring it up again. Yeah. He could enter into the rest of death because he was confident in the power of God.
Yes. David's forefather, or not David's forefather, Jesus' forefather, King David said exactly this in Psalm 16. He said, "My heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body will also rest in hope."
Rest in hope.
In hope.
Rest in confidence.
Because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead.
Wow.
And you will not let your Holy One see decay. What I think he's talking about there is his confidence that even after he dies, God will continue his kingly lineage and one of his sons will reign after him.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, even though my body might die, the lineage of David will live forever. I'm confident of this. I will always be a son of David.
Right. And so Jesus, the ultimate son of David,
he does it. And it's what's fascinating is that God takes the metaphor of death that David is using to describe the way in which lineages and father, son happens.
Right.
And turns it into reality.
Right.
I won't just provide you an unbroken lineage.
Which I've done in Jesus.
You can trace his genealogy in the book of Matthew if you'd like. I've also given you the metaphor, actual life from the actual dead.
That's right. Here is a body in the tomb which everybody expects will see decay.
Yes.
But I'm going to make Psalm 16 true and show you that God's ultimate Holy One will not see decay, nor will I abandon him to the grave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that kind of rest, I mean, takes so much confidence and trust in God. Right. It's like, how can we love? Go back to Maundy Thursday for a second.
Yeah. When
we've been given a new command to love others as Jesus has loved us. What allows us to lay down our lives for others? It's trust and confidence that that's not going to be for naught.
Right.
Like that we're not going to be walked all over, but that Jesus will bring good out of our little deaths.
Yeah. And think about it just more with a little bit more point on it. A lot of people are on the verge of dying.
Right. Yes.
And so there's a confidence that they need as they approach the final years and final days of their life.
Right.
Everyone will sleep. So Black Friday invites us to remind, like, we will all die.
We will all die. Yeah.
Jesus died. We will all die.
Right.
But how do we approach that death? And we approach that death in confidence, like Jesus did. The work has been finished, and death ultimately always leads to resurrection.
Yeah, it's so good. So I think then with that clarity, what we're offering to people today, what Holy Saturday, Black Saturday, what the rest of Jesus in the tomb is offering to people today is to lay down your anxiety because you can have confidence that everything you need to be right with God, to live even though you die physically, right? To know that you're saved.
Yeah.
Everything that you need to have confidence in those truths has been accomplished on Good Friday. Like it is finished. The work is done. Rest. Put your anxiety and your self-performance down and know that you can take it easy. You don't have to earn anything else.
You can be confident that God has done all that God on your behalf has done all that you need to do in order to be with him.
Yeah. And so I think that's the invitation today.
Yeah.
Which is cool too from a meta point to say on a day of death.
Right.
You know, a day that Jesus laid in the tomb, a day of hopelessness
right.
for anybody who was believing in him.
Yeah.
Jesus is actually inviting us into a great deal of restful life.
Yeah, hope in death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will what's Psalm 16 say? I will
rest in hope.
Rest in hope.
I will die in hope.
That's it. Rest in hope.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're being inviting into today.
Yeah.
Rest in hope. That's good. Okay. Well, that's Black Saturday, Holy Saturday.
That's right.
Tomorrow,
Easter Sunday.
Resurrection
Sunday.
Resurrection Sunday. So exciting. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow on our last day of this journey, the resurrection of Jesus on Easter.
Thank you for listening to the Spoken Gospel Podcast. Spoken Gospel creates short films, devotionals, and podcasts like this one. Everything we make is free because of generous supporters like you. To see our resources, visit spokengospel.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for listening. See you next time.